in Las Vegas as the Aces prepare to take on the Phoenix Mercury in the first ever best-of-7 final series. The Aces have been on a remarkable run from winning 21.
When the late-night executive phone lines began ringing across Manhattan, nobody in the upper-floor offices of the basketball headquarters was prepared for the leaked document that was about to hit the press. For months, league officials believed they had tightly wrapped up every single aspect of their historic broadcasting transition, securing what was supposed to be a unified, perfectly controlled victory lap for corporate management. But when a confidential broadcast blueprint from NBC Universal unexpectedly surfaced, detailed plans revealed an individual-focused media strategy centered entirely on Caitlin Clark that left NBA Commissioner Adam Silver and Wnba Commissioner Kathy Engelbert completely furious. What was carefully engineered to be a corporate milestone immediately dissolved into an all-out war between broadcast titans, league executives, and a young star whose unmatched media power has fundamentally broken the traditional rules of sports business. To fully grasp why the league brass is spiraling into full-scale panic, you have to look back at the historical foundation of how women's professional basketball was distributed for decades. Historically, broadcast networks viewed women's sports as a secondary obligation, relegating games to late-night slots, regional channels, or low-budget streaming feeds. With minimal marketing investment, players traveled on commercial flights, played in cramped venues, and worked under a restrictive financial structure that kept salaries modest, while television executives insisted there simply was not enough public demand to justify major capital investments. For years, commissioners operated with complete control, maintaining a top-down hierarchy where the league brand was always marketed above any individual athlete, enforcing a standard corporate ecosystem that prioritized uniform parity over individual superstar exposure. Then came the seismic shift that completely shattered every statistical model, projection, and historical assumption the sports industry had held for over 30 years. During her final collegiate season at Iowa, Caitlin Clark transformed regular season games into national television events, pulling in millions of viewers who had never previously watched a full basketball game in their lives. By the time the national championship game arrived, viewership figures didn't just beat previous women's records. They officially surpassed the men's national final, pulling in over 18 million live viewers on broadcast television. When draft night arrived, ticket sales for her professional team exploded by hundreds of % within minutes. Opposing teams immediately moved their home games into massive NBA arenas to accommodate overflow crowds, and road games began selling out months in advance at prices usually reserved for the finals. This staggering surge in public demand aligned perfectly with the expiration of the league's overarching media rights, triggering a fierce multi-billion-dollar bidding war among media conglomerates. Disney, Amazon Prime Video, and NBC Universal entered a high-stakes battle to secure live basketball content, ultimately crafting an 11-year, $77 billion master contract that radically raised the financial profile of both the NBA and WNBA. Under this mega deal, the Women's League saw its annual domestic rights valuation soar from $60 million to over $200 million a year. But while executives stood at podiums taking credit for this financial triumph, industry analysts, media insiders, and broadcast executives knew the raw truth. The massive valuation spike was driven almost entirely by the cultural wave and viewership guarantees attached to number 22. As the fine print of the monumental television deal was being finalized behind closed doors, NBC Universal quietly began building an independent, aggressive strategy to maximize its massive financial investment. Recognizing that traditional linear television is rapidly dying and cable subscriptions are dropping at an alarming rate, NBC executives knew they could not rely on standard coverage models to justify their multi-billion-dollar payout. industry insiders began leaking details that NBC was secretly planning exclusive, Clark-centric broadcast packages, including direct-to-consumer camera angles like a dedicated player feed, behind-the-scenes documentary series, and bespoke promotional campaigns engineered strictly around her individual brand. Instead of marketing the league as a collective 12-team entity, NBC was treating her like an isolated entertainment franchise, entirely bypassing standard league PR approval channels. When reports of NBC's unsanctioned promotional push reached Adam Silver and Kathy Engelbert, the reaction inside corporate headquarters was described as absolute nuclear fallout. Silver, who has spent decades building a carefully balanced corporate apparatus, where team owners, network partners, and league officials share centralized authority, viewed NBC's move as a direct threat to executive governance. Allowing a television network to build its entire marketing framework around a single rookie sets a dangerous precedent, effectively telling other corporate sponsors and broadcast partners that the league office no longer controls its own distribution narrative. If a network can dictate coverage terms based on individual popularity, the authority of the commissioner's office is essentially reduced to administrative paperwork. For Kathy Engelbert, the situation created an even more catastrophic managerial headache that threatened to tear the internal fabric of the league apart from the inside. Engelbert was already navigating intense pressure from veteran team owners and longtime franchise figures who were growing increasingly frustrated by the overwhelming media imbalance. Owners who had invested millions of dollars into their franchises over 2 decades were suddenly watching their own star players get routinely sidelined in national promotional materials in favor of a single rookie. Engelbert found herself trapped in an impossible dynamic, forced to publicly celebrate the monumental financial windfall brought by Clark's arrival, while privately taking furious calls from angry team executives demanding that the league enforce strict equal exposure mandates on NBC. The simmering tension quickly exploded into open fire within the union ranks of the Wnba Players Association, turning an executive dispute into an all-out labor war. Veteran players who had spent years fighting grueling battles for basic operational upgrades like charter flights, baseline health benefits, and respectable pay structures watched with growing bitterness as a newcomer became the centerpiece of a billion-dollar media overhaul. When news broke that NBC was actively structuring its production strategy around Clark, the Players' Union officially exercised its right to opt out of the collective bargaining agreement early. Union leadership publicly questioned why revenue sharing and salary caps remained strictly capped under legacy formulas, when network partners were openly putting massive resources behind a single player's box office pull. Inside locker rooms across the country, this underlying corporate and media friction instantly translated into physical, high-voltage hostility on the basketball floor. Opposing defenders began treating every matchup against Clark as a personal war for respect, playing with an intense, aggressive physicality that frequently spilled over into viral hard fouls, shouting matches, and tense post-game altercations. Opposing coaches openly admitted in private that their teams were motivated by a desire to prove that the media hype machine did not reflect the true hierarchy of elite professional basketball. Yet, every single time a controversial foul occurred, or a heated confrontation broke out on the floor, the ratings didn't drop. They skyrocketed to unprecedented heights, sending social media into an absolute frenzy. This dynamic presented NBC with an irresistible goldmine, forcing the network to double down on its controversial production strategy despite explicit protests from league headquarters. While Silver and Engelbert pleaded for balanced story arcs that emphasized sportsmanship, league history, and team unity, NBC executives realized that conflict, rivalry, and individual stardom are what drive modern entertainment metrics. The network began framing broadcasts around the intense physical targets on Clark's back, highlighting on-court clashes and post-game drama to keep casual viewers glued to their screens. For NBC, protecting bruised executive egos or maintaining corporate diplomacy with the commissioner's office was completely secondary to keeping millions of paying subscribers logged into their Peacock streaming service. The fundamental clash stems from a historic shift in how modern audiences consume professional sports in an age ruled by algorithms and individual brand identity. Decades ago, fans pledged unwavering loyalty to regional team logos and corporate league brands, tuning in regardless of who was wearing the jersey. Today, younger demographics follow individual personalities, tracking athletes across social media platforms and personal brand ventures, rather than supporting an entire league entity. Caitlin Clark represents the absolute peak of this modern era, an athlete whose personal audience is significantly larger than the traditional fan base of the sport she plays. NBC recognized this reality early, choosing to align their multi-billion-dollar broadcast infrastructure directly with the star, even if it meant burning bridges with top league administration. As details of the conflict continue to surface through sports business channels, high-ranking sources indicate that Clark's personal management team has been quietly orchestrating a master strategy behind the scenes. Rather than relying solely on traditional league endorsement pathways, her team has actively explored direct-to-consumer digital partnerships, independent production ventures, and global ambassador deals that exist entirely outside the umbrella of traditional league control. This calculated independence gives her camp immense leverage in media negotiations, allowing them to dictate terms to television networks that previous generations of professional athletes could only dream of accessing. It represents an unprecedented shift in athlete empowerment, effectively stripping commissioners of their historical monopoly over athlete monetization. Adam Silver's intense frustration is deeply rooted in the long-term structural ripple effects this dynamic threatens to inflict on the broader professional basketball landscape. For decades, the NBA's global dominance was built on the careful cultivation of iconic rivalries, balanced by strict corporate control, ensuring that team owners maintained unified control over media distribution. If NBC successfully establishes a framework where individual broadcast features can be built around a single player without league consent, it sets a template that megastars in the men's game will immediately copy. Top NBA superstars could soon demand personalized camera streams, direct network profit sharing, and independent broadcast rights, completely shattering the collective revenue-sharing model that keeps small market franchises financially viable. Meanwhile, Kathy Engelbert faces an escalating public relations nightmare as every media appearance she makes becomes an uncomfortable interrogation about broadcast favoritism and player pay equity. Whenever she attempts to highlight overall league growth or praise veteran achievements, interviewers immediately steer the conversation back to Clark's broadcast metrics and the mounting labor disputes with the union. Her office has reportedly attempted to draft strict new media guidelines that would force broadcast partners to allocate mandatory airtime to all 12 franchises. But enforcing such restrictions on a network like NBC, that just signed a multi-billion-dollar check, is a battle she has almost zero leverage to win. NBC holds the purse strings, and in the high-stakes world of sports media, money always dictates the narrative. The intense standoff reached a crucial turning point when reports indicated that Adam Silver personally intervened, holding high-level, closed-door emergency sessions with top NBC Universal executives. Silver reportedly demanded that NBC maintain standard corporate hierarchy, dial back individual-centric broadcast framing, and ensure that all promotional materials undergo rigorous league approval before airing. However, television industry veterans point out that once a network pays billions of dollars for broadcast rights, their contractual obligations to their own shareholders override any polite executive agreements. NBC's mandate is to deliver peak viewership numbers to justify their immense capital outlay, and no amount of commissioner pushback will stop them from highlighting the single biggest viewer draw in the sport. As the upcoming season draws closer, The internal battle lines have been permanently drawn, setting up a drama-filled year that extends far beyond the basketball court. League executives are desperately scrambling to contain the damage, searching for ways to preserve traditional corporate authority and soothe the rising tensions among disgruntled team owners and union players. Simultaneously, veteran players are preparing for a brutal labor standoff during the upcoming collective bargaining agreement negotiations, using NBC's massive investment into Clark as their ultimate evidence that the league's economic potential has been artificially suppressed for years. The court has become a arena not just for athletic competition, but for a massive war over labor rights, corporate equity, and modern media power. What makes this situation so endlessly captivating to millions of viewers worldwide is the realization that sports entertainment has officially crossed a point of no return. The era where suit-and-tie commissioners could tightly govern player narratives, suppress individual media leverage, and force networks to follow strict corporate scripts is officially over. A single generation-defining superstar, armed with an unmatched audience draw, has completely exposed the vulnerabilities of legacy sports management, forcing multi-billion-dollar media conglomerates and league front offices to fight over who actually holds the keys to the kingdom. Silver and Engelbert can hold emergency meetings, draft strict corporate memos, and express their outrage behind closed executive doors. But they cannot control the remote controls of millions of fans. As broadcast trucks prepare their cameras and production teams finalize their graphics for the upcoming season, the entire sports world is holding its breath to see how this high-stakes war plays out under the bright arena lights. Every game broadcast will be scrutinized by league officials looking for violations of media protocols, while NBC producers continue to push the boundaries of sports entertainment to capture record-breaking ratings. The rookie at the center of the storm continues to stay silent, quietly working on her game, while the entire business architecture of professional sports shifts around her every move. The balance of power has definitively flipped, leaving top executives to confront a terrifying new reality, where the athlete, not the commissioner, holds absolute authority. The ultimate question that remains for the future of professional sports is whether traditional leagues can survive in an environment where individual athlete brands outgrow the organizations that house them. As NBC prepares to launch its massive coverage, the entire industry is watching to see if this power struggle leads to a total redesign of athlete contracts, television distribution, and league governance for generations to come. Adam Silver and Kathy Engelbert may have built the modern infrastructure of basketball, but Caitlin Clark and the multi-billion-dollar media networks just proved that the audience belongs to the star. And as the opening tip-off approaches, one thing is abundantly clear: professional sports broadcasting will never, ever be the same again.